Build creative confidence. Beat the inspiration addiction. Join the Writer's Gym. My guest at the Writer's Gym today is Ashley Thorpe. Ashley is a self-taught Devon-based animator whose early films, Scarecrow, The Screaming Skull and The Hairy Hands, were a celebration of the neglected aspects of British folklore. His first feature, BORLEY RECTORY, with Reece Shearsmith and Julian Sands, was completed in late 2017 and won Best Animated Feature at Buffalo Dreams Festival, New York, and a Special Achievement in Cinema accolade. After being released on Blu Ray in 2019, the film is now streaming on Netflix, Prime and Talking Pictures. As a freelance animator, he has provided animated titles and sequences for such varied films as the multi-award-winning Woodlands Dark Days Bewitched, Saturn Award-winning Tales of Halloween, MANCUNIAN Man, NEVERLAND NIGHTMARE, as well as many ongoing animated title sequences, and graphics for the ever-terrifying BBC hit show UNCANNY with Danny Robbins. So, obviously, Ashley Thorpe, my first question in this interview is going to be, have you got Kermit with you?
Yeah, of course.
Because we have a history with Kermit.
Here he is.
Oh, hi, Kermit.
I
should have brought mine from the other room.
Yeah,
but
he sits on top of my bookshelf, just slightly out of shot.
Because he's been quite an ideological inspiration to both of us, really, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He's kind of been there since I was teeny tiny. And, it's that thing, isn't it? It's like, what would Kermit do in this situation? Would he lose his rag like Animal, or be sort of really stressed out like Gonzo, or would he keep a level head to get things done and then wave his arms around in private?
You're reminding me weirdly of actually what I saw Richard Osman doing yesterday, which is I think Kermit, like Richard Osman, who are both leaders in very different ways, when there is something that needs to be done as a producer, as a writer, or just in an interview getting through it, they're so good at getting there. They know what needs to happen, and it's done so kindly and so gracefully. Obviously with Kermit there's a point where it goes and maybe that is actually a life skill too, but you got that Kermit after you'd borrowed my Kermit for a year, and then I had my Kermit.
Yeah, that's a really strange story when I tell people that I borrowed somebody else's Kermit and looked after him for a year until I could get my own. People just look at you
holiday.
Like, right.
He enjoyed his holiday very much. He felt very appreciated.
He did, and Lily loved him.
I
think she loved the fact I would just sit there and he'd just be, talking to her and stuff and singing.
And so lovely to have a daughter who is seeing you do all of these incredibly cool things. Yeah, just to have somebody who is seeing you do all of that you are a part of that world and sort of animation and how these characters become so real for us. Yeah. It must be lovely to be able to show her that so practically.
I think so. And also, I've spent most of my life preaching how I always wanted to grow up on Sesame Street. And my approach to how people should live with each other and each other's differences was always very much kind of Sesame Street informed, even though ironically I grew up in Devon in the 70s, which was such a provincial place. Very little kind of multiculturalism at all. And yet my world's view was through the lens of Sesame Street. So whenever, I remember a Sikh family moving in down the road, I was so excited because they were from somewhere else and just almost running around as a kid and waiting for them to come out to play and stuff, because it was just the excitement of difference. And it was exciting to talk to people who had different backgrounds, different belief. And I kind of bang on to Lily quite a lot about these ideas that, inclusion sometimes just about getting involved and then just a little bit of understanding. And I think, as much as some people like to think of Sesame Street as well, it's not political, it's just nice stuff for children. It's like, you're kidding, right? Sesame Street's the ultimate political show in some ways. Look at where it came from. It was set up to help inner city kids fill in the gaps in their education. It's the ultimate punk rock political show, and they look at you baffled. Well, Sesame Street's political. Yeah, it's so political. It's all about trying to do the right thing.
And as a storyteller of any kind, I think that's such an important start, isn't it? That you've experienced that what true and real actually mean, and the lessons that we take are often from the stories we grow up with. So I think you've heard me say in the past, like, I say it jokingly, but it's utterly true that I joke that the two religions that I grew up with were Judaism and Star Trek, that these were the ideas that with both of those, it wasn't about that these stories had to have happened literally to be important. It was, what are these stories saying to me about myself, about how I show up in the world, about, I think most importantly actually in both is that the idea of arguing with God in these particular cases, that it's never about just taking something as read. It's about coming back and saying, but what about this and what about that? And I'm so interested in that in the context of the things that you found, because it does show me, just looking at your biography, which everybody else will have heard me read out already, but just in case you want to recap, Ashley Thorpe is a self-taught Devon-based animator and was celebrating in those early pieces. And I'd say through pretty much everything you've done, the neglected aspects of British folklore, there's such a through line with that. Is that the way you experience your career? There's a through line in those stories.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I mean, because I went off to uni, and you have this kind of naive belief, I think, that when you get to the end of it, you're going to come out not with a piece of paper, but with a career, like a lot of people do. But you just come out with a piece of paper and you're not really sure what to do after that. And I remember feeling as if desperately trying to get anywhere in the media industry felt like endless compromise, and pretending I was really interested in stuff that I actually had very little interest in, chasing the trends, doing what everyone else was doing. And the short films and the animations really came from this weird point where I just said, oh, bollocks to this. I can't be bothered anymore. I'm done. I'm just going to make stuff for me now. And that's where it all started. And ironically, going back and looking at things, which they were things, again, that excited me as a kid. It was overhearing ghost stories when, like, an elderly couple that lived next door used to come round, and they'd have drinks with my mum and dad, and they'd tell each other scary stories, usually Dartmoor myths and things like that. And things like Highwaymen and Dick Turpin and stuff like that. I loved all of that when I was a kid, but nobody else was talking about these things or doing anything like that. And it was those things I crept back to. It's like, well, I'm still excited about these things, so that's what I'm going to do. And that's when things ironically started to happen, and people started asking me to be involved in things.
Can we go a bit more specifically into that? Because it would be lovely to hear a bit about what that looked like.
Yeah. In what way?
There was a point in you where it was like, bollocks to this, I'm going to start doing things for me. And then people came along, and so without going into sort of too much, had I waved my magic wand and these people have, I mean, to be fair, I talk to clients all the time about the magic wand, because you need to know what you want in order to make it happen in your life. If you don't have a sense of what it is, it's a bit like Google. A magic wand is very like Google. That's the way I see it. The more specifically you can say what you want, the more practically you can bring it into your life. So what was that for you, and who were the people?
Well, it started really where I'd lived with a Greek lady for about 7 years or so, and I'd actually moved out to Greece, desperately trying to make things work, and that all collapsed and fell to pieces, including that relationship fell to pieces. So I moved back to Exeter, and that was when I thought, you got a fork in the road here, really. Yeah, another Muppet reference. And
do you want to do the Muppet reference? Because they won't know.
They won't know that. It's in the Muppet movie, and they say there should be a fork in the road coming up. And they drive past a massive piece of cutlery in the road. And I think of that every time they say there's a fork in the road. And I thought, well, you either sit in your dressing gown smoking fags on the back step, or you could be proactive and use this as a chance to kind of reinvent yourself, get back into painting, stop trying to be the happy, sunny person that you were desperately trying to be in Greece. Just do the stuff that you really like, look at all the strange folklore stuff. So I started making this animation called SCAYRECROW, which was about a ghostly highwayman. And it's like it ticked the box of the highwayman. So I get to do highwayman, but then he dies, and then he comes back as a ghost. So you've got 2 tick boxes there. And I just started making it without any help or any funding. I had a friend actually called Mark Stevens. He went out and he was helping me film it and shoot photographs for the thing. And it was then actually through the Exeter Phoenix, I saw an ad in the local press.
Say what the Exeter Phoenix is.
Well, the Exeter Phoenix is a local arts centre, And I'd never actually been there before I saw this little ad for funding. I saw a little tiny ad that was literally about 12 lines, and it said cash for films, which when you're skint and doing a horrible job that you really don't like, I thought, well, that sounds good. So it was basically an arts grant, and it was about £2,000 to help you make a short film. And I applied and I got it. So then suddenly it became a passion project, and now it's a passion project with a few quid behind it. So I could actually hire proper costumes, and I could start structuring it and thinking about what I was going to do with it. So it started off as this thing that was just going to be done for fun and purely for self-gratification, really. And then suddenly I had a deadline. I had people that wanted to see it. It was going to be screened locally, but it was still very much, this is what I want to do and this is what I'm going to do. And the Phoenix were always very good with that. They gave you basic directions, but they never tried to wrestle control of the car away from your hands, kind of thing. And I got a real taste for it. You know, the film got finished, they screened it, and then I thought, I wonder how ballsy you can be with this. It's made in the back garden and out in the woods type of production. Maybe I'll send it to festivals. And one of the other things I did, I sent it to people like Chris Alexander at Fangoria magazine. And I contacted podcasts I was listening to, like Rue Morgue magazine. And I just thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. I'm selling tiles on an industrial estate. I might as well do this, whereas this thing's going to sit on my shelf and do nothing. So I just sent it out into the world. And that's kind of when stuff started coming back, because Rue Morgue magazine said, oh, well, this is really interesting. Chris Alexander, he wrote a feature about it and put it on the Fangoria website, which I couldn't believe as an 80s horror kid to have my name even remotely linked with that. But one of the most direct consequences of that was Stuart Andrews at Rue Morgue Radio, the podcast. He'd recently interviewed Glenn McQuaid and Larry Fessenden, and he mentioned Scarecrow to them because they were about to do this old school, these radio dramas under the banner of Tales from Beyond the Pale. So they reached out and contacted me, asking me if I wanted to write a radio script for them that was very kind of hammer horror and have a similar feeling to the Scarecrow film. So it's just one of these weird things where it was like pulling on a little thread of something that was buried in the past, and you keep pulling it and this bigger and bigger thing starts appearing.
That image of the golden thread going through from the past to the future, it resonates with me so much, because all of the best decisions that I've made and that I hear guests on the Writers' Gym and everyone I talk to, really, the best decisions tend to come from something pretty deep in who you are, and the worst decisions tend to come from what should I be doing?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a phrase that I find myself using a lot, mainly with freelancers, but not exclusively, about jigsaw careers, about when we do it well, we're moving away from the idea that you have this one job and somebody's telling you how to do it, and that is you for life, which, can sound quite attractive sometimes, but actually, if you have the personality like you were describing, where you've got ideas, you need to bring them into the world. It's more about finding the different pieces and finding what those pieces are for you and how those fit together. Listening to you talk about it, one of the things that jumped out for me was that there was a point where sounds to me like you gave yourself that permission, as in, I need to be the one who proactively goes and talks to podcasts, follows that thread. Yeah. To all of those different places that it can naturally go. Was that a conversation you were having consciously? Were you aware of that?
I think so, yeah. And also, this was around the time that Sue and I got together as well. And we'd known each other since, again, it's the golden thread. We'd known each other since we were 9. And we used to sort of date as much as 9 and 10-year-olds date. Holding hands out the school gates is a date, isn't it?
Oh, that's totally a date.
It's totally a date, yeah. And it was around the time that we got together, and I think that helped galvanise things as well, because it felt as if another thing, which was, this is meaningful, and she was always very, and still is actually, it's like really encouraging in that term of, if you want something, you just got to try, just got to do it, go for it. And my mum was always a bit like that too, where she would say, nobody's going to drop this in your lap. If you want something to happen, you just got to go and sort it out. It was very much that black and white. Just do it. do it? What have you got to lose? And I think that that conversation was definitely happening because, I was still doing a 9-to-5 job I didn't really like very much, doing the animations and painting in between. But it felt for a little while, it was how many different hats can I wear at the same time? And let's see which one goes in the right direction. It's like, well, the animation's a bit slow. I'll concentrate more on the illustration for a bit. Oh, somebody wants me to write a script. I'll be a writer today. I'll put that hat on, and you do a bit of that. And then you go back to the other thing and you do a bit of that. And there's still a little bit of that now, actually, but it used to feel like an act of desperation, I think, when I first started doing it, as if you're just desperately trying to keep going in any direction. Whereas now I actually really quite enjoy, it feels more like musical chairs. With myself. And I quite enjoy the feeling of sometimes, today I'm an animator. And then I think, actually, it's going to be really nice tomorrow because they want that painting done. So I'll get on with that in the morning, and just moving things around so that you also have that freedom of, I'm not feeling that today. I'm going to get on with that job. They all need to be in by this point and this point and this point, but I'm feeling more of a painting mood today. So I'm going to crack on with that one, and I'll go back to that when I've got better ideas.
And that's another kind of really important permission, isn't it? That sometimes the to-do list, however sensible you are and however healthily you are utilising your deadlines, if there is a thing where you're thinking, this morning I'm doing this, and your mind is just like, no, you're not.
That's not happening.
That's the boss. That's the boss coming in, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that you will be in the mood for something else today and you'll be in the mood for that another time.
And also, and it works in a really interesting way as well, because I've got another distraction now. I've obviously got a little dog who loves going out for walks. Yay. So whenever things get difficult, that's also my excuse to go, right, bye-bye desk. And I'm gone, because it is that freedom of knowing that sometimes you have to walk away from something to get the best idea. And the second that I'm banging my head against the desk thinking I'm trying so hard, it's not happening. In fact, I'm probably making really bad decisions. I'm wasting time, actually. I'm better off walking away or doing something else that needs doing. And when I'm doing the other thing, usually that's when my brain settles and the train goes back on the tracks again, and it just says, you know why that's not working, don't you? It's because you did that or you didn't do that. So I'll be painting and go, I'm an idiot, I'll fix that tonight. And then you'll go back and you'll fix whatever was wrong with the animation or the writing, whatever it was.
With me, I call it lying, because I had a singing teacher many years ago who at one point said, you're not really singing, you're lying, when it wasn't happening. And I will sometimes catch myself being truly not in the mood, and through good girl syndrome, doing it anyway, rather than going, okay, I'm not in the mood, I will go and do other thing. Come back to this. Lying's
a really good way of doing it. It's almost like you're putting on a show, so that when people come in, you're looking busy, but we actually just sat there going, this is awful.
And there's a scale somewhere in us, isn't there, where sometimes staring out of the window, doing in the physical world absolutely nothing, is categorically the most useful thing that we can be doing. But because it is so sort of integral, the idea of what work looks like, there are times when you need to say to yourself, actually, do you know what? You are just staring out of the window, and I will bring myself back and I will do an imperfect but progressive thing. But other times you just need to accept that that is part of it.
Yeah, I tend to physically get out of the house. My escape used to be just going down the gym for an hour, because I really dislike going to the gym. So it was almost like a Catholic whipping. It's like, if you're not working, you can go and suffer somewhere else.
So in writer's gym terminology, because I also do not like the gym to the extent that I don't go to a physical gym. I have weights. I have a wonderful physiotherapist who is pretty much my trainer. I do the stuff, but I do it in a way that works for me. And I think writing and the writer's gym vocabulary is about what exercises do you bring into your life every day, every week. Yeah. In order to make that happen. It's funny you say performance, because the idea of performance and ritual to summon something, not an end in itself, but in order to create a feeling whereby you do what you need to do in the world. That for me is exactly what the whole exercise thing is about. It's about summoning it in yourself. Yeah. Are there any other sort of exercises or things you do or situations you create in order to get the best out of yourself?
Yeah, I'm very much a creature of habit, I must admit. We live in a sort of very much a family house. by that which I mean cluttered and mildly chaotic, with a cat and a dog who live like Tom and Jerry. But my desk is so orderly, and I have to keep it clean, and I make myself little post-it notes that I keep around for which needs to be done in what order and things. And I am very much a creature of habit. I get up at exactly the same time every day. You know, I make sort out the kids' breakfast for school. Everyone leaves at the same time every day for work and school. I sit down, I have a cup of coffee. Nothing starts before then. I get my admin and my emails done. And it's just even though I can do this kind of jigsaw feeling thing where I can, well, what do I think I'm going to work better on today? And I can pick and choose a little bit. My day is structured quite rigidly, actually. You know, I know for a fact, you know, by about noon today, I'll take Dolly out for a walk down by the river because that's the getting away thing. I think it's that I do live by structures as much as you have to adapt them when you've got family, you know, to kind of work within and around. I think if I didn't, I think I'd be a chaotic mess. I really would. I like having and knowing that, well, I try to get all the stuff I really don't want to do actually done with the cup of coffee first thing. It's a bit like that. I never put it off, because one of the things that I used to do was, oh, that's going to be horrible, I'll do that later. And then the further away down the day you push it, it was a bit like when I used to do evening work, and you spend the whole day thinking about this thing you didn't want to do later. You'd find that it would cripple you throughout the afternoon, thinking, oh God, I've got to go to work in a supermarket in 3 hours. And you'd sit for 3 hours thinking about it instead of doing anything. So now it's just, oh God, I've got to send all those emails. Right, line the coffee up. Let's just rattle through them and get everything rubbish done first.
So
and then
it's
fun
stick and
time.
carrot. Yeah, sort of stick and carrot. That I'm wondering, does that also make you less, I hope it would make me less precious about getting done the things that I'm not actually that emotionally involved with but need to get done, so that the coffee won't be too cold, so that I can get on with the real stuff? Does it make you more focused on those things, sort of get them done?
It does, and weirdly, it does create a clarity. So I don't faff about. And I urgently kind of want to get on with the stuff I need to get done, but also that I want to get done. The boring stuff gets done with quite military precision. So it's all just done and out the way, and it's right, and get on with the good stuff now.
That feels like the best definition of professional writing I could ever ask for, that it is about realising what actually isn't where your energy needs to go. Do it efficiently, get it out of the way, focus on the art. And people find that so hard, which I guess as a rather elegant segue to where I encountered you, that brings me to BORLEY Rectory, because I realise I am talking to a man who told me he spent quite a long time on every single dust particle. I'll just take that image with me for life. I use that as an example of an animator's insanity still to this day. Would you talk people through BORLEY Rectory, please? It was a long, painful process. It's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, it was... Which aspects would you like to know about it? Like, why on earth did I do it? BORLEY Rectory, which is such a beautiful animation of the legends and the hype and the ghost stories and the human stories. Talk to me about what brought you to that and what it was, because it's such a beautiful story, set of stories and animation, kind of an anthology in a way. It kind of is, yeah. It's almost different families or different groups approaching and being affected by the same set of circumstances. I think that's one of the things I found interesting about it. It was something that I encountered first in childhood. It was via the Usborne World of the Unknown books. And it was that moniker. We must just say, you're also partially responsible for getting that back in print, really, aren't you? Yeah, me and Mark Morris, the lovely Mark. Yeah. We when we were making special features for the film when it came out on the Nucleus Blu Ray, I chatted with Mark and just said, I wonder if there's any way we could get in contact with Usborne, because those mystery books were such an important part of my childhood and get me interested in the supernatural and monsters and UFOs and whatever. I wonder if there's anyone we could talk to. And then, it was just a magic spark of that moment that Anna Howarth was wondering whether anything could be done with these like classic 70s books, and it led to them getting republished.
crazy. So, I mean, that was the reason. It was because of those books. And it was this idea, which always sticks in a kid's head, this idea of, the most haunted house in England. So it was like the big one. And I just thought it'd be an interesting thing to try and tell in terms of animation. One, because the story did seem to be broken down into these little chapters, like these little vignettes. But also, I thought that because ghost stories themselves they're quite mercurial. You can see them in lots of different ways. So I thought that the approach that I was playing with in terms of animation, of it being a mixture between live action and animation, animation on the live action and live action elements within the animation. So it's between worlds. It's between something real and something completely fabricated. I thought, well, that seems like a good marriage for a ghost story anyway, because you're never really sure what's real, what's the figment of somebody's imagination, what's something clouded by memory, or something's a projection of want or need. And it just seemed like, well, this seems like the perfect little package, really.
And we've got Reece Shearsmith, who you've worked with several times, different projects now, Julian Sands, many, many very talented actors. I am not playing favourites, but including Claire Louise Amias and Jonathan Rigby.
Oh, yes.
And just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. How did that work in terms of marrying those two worlds? Were you storyboarding very specifically and then filming, or were you filming and then going and drawing over? How does one do that? It was
kind of written initially as quite a traditional script, because Julian's narration was done years in advance of the animation actually starting, because we really struggled to get funding for it. We had funding in the shape of Channel 4's shooting gallery, and then the person that was organising it just disappeared. It was like Spinal Tap. One minute this producer was there, and it's like, oh, this is going to be part of shooting gallery. This is going to be amazing. And then, hello, they're just not there anymore. So it languished for years. So it started off as a script, and then once I realised that maybe we could crowdfund it, I spent a few months and I storyboarded the entire thing. And the main reason I did that, I think, was because I knew that it was going to be a mixture of live action and animated elements. So I knew that if you're going to have a character walk into a room and look out a window, we better make sure we know where the window is in shot and where the light source is going to be, to try and help marry the actor and how they're lit with the background, because that's the first thing. If you mess up the lighting, you're never going to convince anybody they're in that space. So it was a technical thing mainly. The other side of it was that it forced me to make the film in my head before we got started. But then the other thing, which I don't talk about very often, which is I mainly storyboarded it because I was absolutely terrified of making it, I think. And it was this idea of, when I walk out onto the set, I'm not a trained director. I'm not somebody who actually enjoys getting out in front of crowds and talking. I was really worried that I would come across as someone who blatantly didn't have the faintest idea of what they were doing. Whereas if I came out with this laboured document where every shot had been drawn and it had notes on there saying where the camera needs to be and the lights, it would make me look very professional and very confident, and that I totally knew what I was doing. And it really helped. I think it helped sell the idea to me, if nothing else. I could look and kind of go, yeah, look, I do know what I'm doing, even if inside I'm dying.
It's such a practical use of imposter syndrome as well, because that's the one thing that everybody but the biggest egos have in common. And, I think probably even they do underneath it. But the fact that we're carrying around the idea that everybody else is a proper adult and we're just pretending. And that's such a brilliant example of, you knew at some level you needed to find your own permission. You knew it needed to happen. You knew you were feeling like, I'm not a proper director or whatever. You found a language, you found a way to show yourself external reality, external validation. This exists. Yeah. Now it's just up to me to do this as clearly as possible. I guess we're all finding our way towards that. You just need to do it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that because I knew that, like the animated short films, they were all made with friends and family, every single one of them. Nicholas Vince did some voiceover in The Hairy Hands.
And he was even in my audio drama last year.
Yeah, he's lovely. I love him. Yes. Uncle Nick, as we call him in our house. Uncle Nick. It's Uncle Nick. Let's go sit with him. But that was quite intimidating at the time. But then BORLEY was a totally different ball game, really, because it was walking out on set and, like you say, you've got professional actors. You've got people like Claire. you've got Annabelle, who'd just been in Luther. You've got Reece. You know, you've got all these people that are like, they're proper actors. It's not like your dad and like your mate used to work within the bookshop anymore. You're walking out and thinking, oh my God, these guys actually know what they're doing. They're not fudging it like we are.
And just on that example, that's such a lovely way of, because you found a way to take the imposter syndrome with you and rather than fight the feelings, use the feelings to make something happen. I think you met Reece through that, and you're now obviously doing Uncanny, and so many things have happened. That was that thread continuing, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, weirdly, Reece came about because I think it was something as simple as during the crowdfunding campaign. I don't know how it came up on his like Twitter feed or something. I think it was maybe because Darren Brown had tweeted it or something, saying somebody's making a film about BORLEY RECTORY, and he saw it and he retweeted it, went, it's great. I love BORLEY RECTORY. Help get this made. And then I just reached out to him in one of those beer soft Friday evenings and just said, would you like to be in it? And thinking he's going to go, leave me alone. And he went, yeah, great. If you manage to get the money to get it started, absolutely, stay in touch. And that was it, really. And then over the years, he's just he supported the film. He's helped push it out there. He's always been ever so good, just trying to get me involved in different things. And then obviously the stage fright artwork recently. Why they didn't get Graham Humphreys to do it?
Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, I suddenly got an email about it was beginning of December, I think it was, last year, from Reece. And I still get this thing. And again, I think it's partially imposter syndrome. But when anybody interesting contacts me, I always feel like I'm in trouble. Like I've done something, or somebody's heard an interview that I've given, and Reece has reached out and going, that's not how it happened. You know, so it popped up and I thought, oh God, what's happened? And he contacted me, and all it was, he just said that, we're doing Stage Fright, the Inside Number 9 stage show, and we would really like a Grand Guignol style poster. And I said, can I give you a ring about it later? So it's like, yeah, absolutely. And he just sat there thinking, wow, okay. And then he phoned me up, and he was clearly rushing around like he always is, phoned me up on his mobile, rushing off to a costume check or something. And he said, yeah, we need a Grand Guignol poster. Are you familiar? It's like an early sort of 20th century. I went, well, yeah, I do know Grand Guignol, weirdly. I discovered it via Clive Barker when I was a teenager, because he used to bang on about Grand Guignol all the time. And I said, what's that? So I went off and read about it. But weirdly, I'd been discussing a documentary on Grand Guignol with David Gregory at Severin, because he had, that same week, weirdly, had contacted me to say, I've spent the last 10 years making a documentary about Grand Guignol, and I wonder whether you could do some animations of the building itself, because we've only got grainy old black and white photos. Do you think there's any way that you could make it look like you're walking down the Rue Chaptal towards it? And so in 1 week, I had 2 conversations about Grand Guignol. It was really weird. So that was it. And then I spent last Christmas, while everyone else is being jolly, sat painting an image of a mad doctor drilling into the top of a woman's head. Like you do.
and with such beautiful timing, it all just it came together. When and how did you and Uncanny find each other? Because obviously you and Reece are both involved with Uncanny.
Yeah, he's been a guest on it a few times, I think, and Uncanny was purely down to BORLEY RECTORY again. BORLEY's been amazing in many ways, and one thing I give to any like young filmmakers for advice is that sometimes you've just got to take that leap and just make the thing you really want to make and disregard what's supposed to be popular, because you don't know what will come out of it. And BORLEY RECTORY, by just kind of going, this is what I want to make, and I know the style's weird, and yeah, I know it's old flickery black and white, but it will look totally different from anything else at any film festival. It'll be a Marmite thing. You'll love it, or you'll just think, whatever, rubbish. But as a consequence of that film, loads of people came to me afterwards asking me to say, could you do something in that style or with that approach for our thing? And that's what happened with Uncanny. I was just sat at my desk working one morning, and Simon Bernard of Bafflegab contacted me out of the blue and just said, I watched BORLEY RECTORY recently, really liked it. we have a title sequence for Uncanny, which is going to be moving from podcast to TV show. And I hadn't actually heard any Uncanny, which is terrible. When he contacted me, I instantly did start listening to it, but I hadn't heard any of it before then. And he said, do you think we could have a chat about what they'd like? And that's how it started. That's
just a great example of the universe meeting you halfway, that although you haven't discovered it, it's got so many things in common with you already.
Yeah.
And when you're doing enough of your own stuff, the universe will start doing
things
that.
Always come together. I mean, this was what was so strange. And I realised that Simon, I really like Simon because he's got that, he does so much stuff with the BBC, but he has that once removed thing, so he can look at what's going on and just kind of go, don't worry about it. They always do that. Just hold your ground. You know, he's a good person to have on your side. That he'd had so many cross paths with different people. He'd worked with Reece before on audio dramas and all these sorts of things. But and I'm still doing Uncanny stuff now. I handed a bit of artwork in for them yesterday morning. So apart from the animations, they said, can you do all the graphics and posters and things from like UncannyCon, all the podcast artwork? I do all of that now. So every now and then I'll just suddenly get a message saying, where can Danny be stood now? You know, looking over his shoulder, what weirdness can be in the background? And they just say, you know, well, we want it to be a Halloween themed, Christmas themed, whatever it is. And I just sit and go back to the toy box and start inventing spooky backgrounds.
And this is the aim of everything, isn't it? That we want it to be a toy box. It's never an exam room. It's a playroom. All of this.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I do a little bit of teaching with like young kids and teaching them animation. And one of the first things I always try to teach them is that very same thing. They come in and they've never met each other and they're all nervous. And it's like, this is not school. There are some rules. There are some ground rules. Feel safety more than anything. But I mean, ultimately, this is a play box. This is where you're going to play with your ideas and see how far you can take them.
And that see how far you can take them is so important, isn't it? Because if you don't let yourself see what it is you're trying to do, if you try and write the final draft or draw the final draft or film the final draft before you know what the first messy one looks like, you're going to miss the treasure.
Yeah, and I think that's it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because it's great that you've invited me on here to talk about the process, because weirdly, I'm sat here talking about myself like I'm Yoda or something, but I'm really not. And especially because there are times I find animation difficult, but I'm so much more at ease with the visual arts, like with painting and with animation, than I am with writing, weirdly. And I've struggled for years to work out why my brain makes this differentiation between these two things, because sometimes I really, really, really struggle to write. I find script writing the hardest thing. I find it harder than sitting in front of a blank canvas and starting. And I don't know why there's any difference in my head. I'm not sure what it is. It's almost like a kid that's given a new bike. That I go, well, I know I can ride a bike, but maybe I won't be able to ride this new bike as well as I ride my old one. It's really weird, and I sit there going, why are you beating yourself up? You've written scripts before. What are you doing? It's fine. But I sit there all the time going, oh, this is crap.
If this were a coaching session, we would now be looking at what the key to that playroom was. What's your guess about what that key might be?
I mean, I must admit, my way into scripts tends to be, you have to just picture it visually. So the way that I get excited about the idea is images. You know, I have to think of specific images that I think, well, that's a haunting image. I can run with that image, you know. And I finished a feature film script not that long ago, actually. I say finished, that's probably abandoned.
Is there such a thing as finished? Never mind, is there such a thing as ghosts? Is there a finished?
That'll do. I wrote the end. It's just it's finished for now.
Yeah.
And my way into it was strange visual moments. It was very strange specific things, like, you know, derelict streets and people's memories and keepsakes sort of blowing along in the gutters. You know, this man, he feels like he's lost everything, and everything's become this sort of disappointment. So he literally feels like his life's this kind of like derelict. And it's just it started off as just like images that and like some weird link, because he's a dustbin man, because I thought it'd be really fun to write a script
Yeah.
about someone who picks up other people's rubbish, but at the same time feels as if his is descending into it. And this idea between, what are those jars that the Egyptians used to keep their remains in? Was it the panoptic jars? Something like that?
The only word I'm now having in my head I actually got from Doctor Who. I can't remember what the real word is.
Yeah.
Again, story's more real to us than reality.
Yeah, and it was this idea of seeing, he starts having nightmares about seeing his like wife and daughter in dustbins, as if they're like these jars that the Egyptians used to store them, their remains for the afterlife in. And it was just weird images that kept coming into my head. And that was my way in. It's like, right, okay. But then the comfort in terms of trying to structure something, quite often that's, weirdly, that's where I lose my nerve almost. And which is weird, because obviously with animation, you've got to be so structured. I have to create a workflow so everything works and you're not wasting loads of time building something you're going to have to change later. But then I have this thing in my brain that goes, no, it's not the same.
Yesterday I was interviewing the founder of Barefoot Coaching, where I qualified as a coach. And the way I discovered coaching was Kim Morgan, the founder's columns in Psychology's magazine. And it's a fictionalized case study of a coaching client and what's going on for them, but also what's going on for the coach. That the whole point is everybody's a human. Everybody's reacting to things that are as much themselves as the world. It's never about blame. It's all about curiosity. So I discovered what I now do through those columns that she had written. Now, this is going to be an important word in this story. Written. She also wrote, among many other things, my two favourite books on coaching. That's a massively short version of what she's done, but that is something she's done. When I emailed Kim, and that was one of those emails like your one to Reece, where I was going, it's all right. When she got that email, she was absolutely lovely, but was very good at explaining to me how she wasn't a real writer, as every single writer manages to explain to themselves. So I presented the evidence, which is it's so reassuring when the writers that we admire have the same reaction that we might have about ourselves. We had a lovely interview. It was great. Anyway, point being, I don't know if I ever gave you the Writer's Gym bookmark when I last saw you, but among, not the one I'm holding up right now, which is one side of it, there may be 7 basic plots, but there are infinite original voices. You know, we're not looking for a right answer. We're looking for ourselves. It's got a bunch of phrases that we come back to, because although there are no wrong answers, there's a few, like you say, it's like road safety. There's a few safety guidelines, as with animation, that keep you going. But my favourite one, this one here, Say the Thing, that actually came from when I was writing an article for Fangoria magazine, and it was about a subject that was very involved for me, very personal. I'll say what it was. It was anti-Semitism in 70s horror. And the conversation had come from my partner, Mark, who we talked about earlier, hadn't known what certain images that he'd released meant. And at the time, when somebody said in front of me, and Mark, doesn't that bother you, Rachel? And the tiredness in me that, you know, it's so invisible all the time. And it was probably in that moment that I realised how invisible I'd made it. And then Fangoria wanted me to do this thing. So it was very big and important. And as it happened, the editor I was working with was Jewish as well. And we were both, as, you know, people, we were just, it's the tiredness. A lot of people go, all of what's going on in Israel is all of what's going on in Judaism. And it's not. And it's not, you know, and it was just all very exhausting. So I was overthinking and overthinking and overthinking. And what Ariel did while I was trying to chuck everything that could possibly work into this piece was Say the Thing. And as with everything on my lovely bookmark, whatever I am overthinking in life or on the page, that tends to be what actually gets you through it to the solution. It stops being a fork in the road and it starts just being a road, because you know what you know and what you need to say. And I love your example of that writing so visually, you can see the picture in your head. So your job really is Say the Thing. This is what I see in my head. It's not about how I put it on the script. It's about how truthfully I put it in the script. Not unlike a set model for theatre or, you know, or any of those things. Your job is to say honestly what is in your head rather than to get caught up in doing it prettily. Because the way writers, and not just new writers, but especially new writers, will hold themselves back or hold ourselves back is school told us about vocabulary. School told us you can't start a sentence with a fronted adverbial. I honestly had an adult come and say that to me. I'm not allowed to start a sentence with a fronted adverbial. That happened. And it is all permission, isn't it? It's finding that. But it sounds like you have found yourself as a visual writer.
I think I also get disappointed in what I do. So there's an element of that, but it's interesting about sort of saying the thing, because I think it was a script called Dead Men's Shoes, and it was a radio script initially. And then I thought there were things in there that I really wanted to explore and adapt. So I took that as a starting point, the basic concept of it, and I thought, let's try and write a feature film using those core ideas and see where I can go with it. And it becomes quite a different animal. But then it's interesting you saying about Say the Thing, because I realised that when I started writing this new script, it was a few years ago when things were particularly difficult. And it was around the kind of the COVID times. Everything became quite hard. I started having to work in a medical warehouse, literally lugging boxes of medicines and things about. And I suddenly realised that, there's a reason why I've gone back to this idea, was because I wrote the radio script when I'd just been made redundant. So it was the smoking fags in your dressing gown on the back step. And that was kind of what the script was about. It was about people that would do literally anything to survive, that they will lie about their qualifications just to get their foot in the door. But then in this case, in the script, it backfires on him because the thing he really needs to know how to do, he's lied about, and that was the whole conceit of the story. And I realized that during COVID, I'd gone back to this idea, and it was still that same idea. But then something else had happened, and I think what it was the weight of responsibility, or certainly a joint responsibility with Sue and myself, of trying to keep a family going when you felt like you weren't doing enough, And I think loads of people felt that struggle and that burden during COVID because everything just shut down, everything was a bit worrying. You had, it was an awful time for lots of different families in terms of fatalities and illness and everything. And I started looking at things in a very different way. And the thing that started haunting me was this idea of there's going to be so many things that my kids are not going to get to do because I'm not doing enough. And that was my fear, I think. And then it was that fear twinned with this idea of faking it to get somewhere. That when all that went into this character, into this script, and then I realized after a while, apart from the visual ideas, I realized that's really what I was writing about. I was writing with this person that became always trying to do the right thing and felt really disillusioned with the world. That felt like he was becoming the rubbish, the detritus that he was collecting, and that the casualties of that and his failures were going to be his family, which is why he starts seeing them in the rubbish in his dreams. And then this opportunity arrives and he's completely ill-prepared for it and all the rest of it, It's like Mike Leigh does an Amicus movie.
Wow.
It's very weird. But it was that, like you say the thing. And I suddenly realized it's like, I kind of knew I was writing about me a little bit. I don't feel as bad as this character, but it is informed by genuine fears and genuine feelings of kind of inadequacy.
And actually that's really important.
Haunted by a future you're not going to be able to give your loved ones. And it's like, well, that's something that's always frightened me anyway. And I think a lot of self-employed people have that, that responsibility. But as soon as I realized, it's like, that's what you're writing about. That's his greatest fear. That's what's haunting him.
And that's the permission that we all really desperately do need to give ourselves. Is it doesn't mean you're feeling exactly as that character is feeling, but it does mean you've found an intrinsic what if that comes from you.
You can explore it. That. Yeah. And and also I realized, and I then suddenly went in and wrote in like weird little conversations that I color them a little bit, but genuine conversations I'd had with Lily, the little silly things like, when can we have a garden? When can we do this? When can we have a tree house? So when we get a tree, when can we have a tree? When we get a garden? It's those. We have a garden. So but in the story, they live in a crappy place that's falling apart, and But it's this idea of writing your fears into it,
Mm.
And then you really start feeling for your characters then, because you think, right, okay, this guy isn't just a cipher for him to get from there to there. So he meets that person and that happens. You know, you kind of think, well, I know why he did that. He's desperate. He's absolutely desperate for something to happen.
This was the workshop that sadly I ended up not being able to do at your wonderful festival because my partner Mark broke his tooth while we were literally about to walk out of the door. But that was all about your fear as your muse. That's one of my favourite workshops that I do, because it is so important to understand that fear is not something to push away and avoid. It is something to listen to and understand, and realise that anxiety and creativity are using the same software.
Yeah.
Because then you've got that choice, which you've used so beautifully. But I wonder, would you like to talk about Hell Tour? Because that feels like almost the next chapter, or another chapter of this same golden thread of a career.
Yeah. So Hell Tour came about really when BORLEY RECTORY was doing its tour around the festivals. And I went to some amazing ones. Been very lucky, actually. But ironically, I always felt really sorry for Sue that she never got to go to the really good ones. So we were invited off to a couple that happened over one weekend. So I said, well, look, come along with me this time. We'll get Lily looked after. Come with me. We'll have fun. And those were the two of the most disappointing ones that we went to. I was like, I'm sorry, I won't make you go on these things again. But what weirdly happened was that Sue came away from that and just said, God, I reckon we could do that. We could do that. I reckon we could do that and better. And we would look after the guests better. We can do that. So it back in about 2019, we did actually say, well, why don't we try to do something which, again, will celebrate local folklore, and we'll look at Devon legends and Cornish things and things like that. We'll tie it into contemporary films. We'll try to get local filmmakers involved, try and get a bit of a scene going, try to get people to connect. But for it to be a celebration of the region, whilst showing lots of gothic horrors and putting talks on and things. And then so we launched the Hell Tour Festival, and it was very much kind of directed by Sue. Just really wanted something exciting to happen in the area, and we did one in 2019, and then COVID happened. But we did one last year, which went really well. Had people like Reece Shearsmith down, and had Caroline Munro and Madeline Smith, and it was good fun. We're doing it all again, and the theme's ghosts this year. So we're looking at lots of local ghost stories, but we're showing classic ghost films like The Haunting and The Uninvited. Some sort of rarely screened things. And we got the woman in black herself, Pauline Moran's coming too. So that should be fun.
Oh, what a wonderful example of fear as a muse, and just
fear is a muse.
It is, and the whole of your life following that thread because you have given yourself permission to explore it. That's beautiful. Well, as always, it's been an enormously enjoyable conversation, and thank you for talking us through this. And looking forward to hearing what you write and animate and create next.
Yes, yeah, there's loads of stuff still in the works.
Ashley Thorpe, thank you for joining the Writers' Gym.
Thank you for inviting me.
You've visited the Writers' Gym with author and coach Dr Rachel Knightley. Production and sound design are by Ashley Lexine, and theme music is by Chris Gregory. To join a Writers' Gym workout online or in London, as a guest or as a member, visit writersgym.com or email thewritersgym@rachelknightley.com. Hey! We are welcoming Dolly Thorpe to the Writers' Gym.
She used to be so small that she would sit on my lap like a kitten. Oh. Now she is not so small.
Oh.
Who's that?
Hi, Dolly. Hey, I'm Rachel. Hello.
She's a very good dog.
Oh, I want to meet her in the real world. I want to meet her in the real world.
You will. Next time you come down. Yeah. Absolutely.